Call the meeting to order and welcome everyone to the October 7, 2024 City of Kalispell Council meeting. Can I have a roll call, please?
Councilor Gabrielle.
Here.
Councilor Graham. Uh-oh.
Small delay.
Here.
Councilor Dowd.
Here.
Councilor Dahlman.
Here.
Councilor Fisher. Councilor Hunter.
Here.
Councilor Nunnally.
Here.
Councilor Carlson. And Mayor Johnson.
Here. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Mr. Graham, can you lead?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We have our agenda in front of us for the evening. Do need to make a motion to amend, to add an item at the end. Mr. Graham, did you want to?
Sure. I would move that we make an agenda item at the end of today's agenda to move our meeting to a closed meeting pursuant to Montana Code annotated 2-3-203.
And you're proposing doing that as item J and replacing J with K?
Yes.
Okay. Have a second?
Second.
Okay. All in favor of the motion to amend, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Right?
Opposed, like sign. Now can I have approval of the agenda as amended? Motion? Mr. Dowd?
I move the agenda as amended.
Second.
Second, thank you, Ms. Gabriel. All in favor of the motion signify by stating aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Motion carries. We have 4 items on the consent agenda this evening. The first item are the council minutes from the September 16, 2024 meeting. The second item is award lower zone storage tank replacement, Schedule 1, Reservoir 1 project. This item considers awarding the bid for the lower zone storage tank 1 replacement project to Preload LLC in the amount of $6,424,000. The third item is change order 4 for the 2023 Tank and Wells Project Schedule 2. This item considers approval of a change order for this project, increasing the price by $158,145 and adding an additional 14 days. And the fourth item is confirmation of firefighter paramedics Chris Albrecht and Will Watson. This item considers confirmation of the firefighters who have completed a 1-year probationary period. Is there any public comment on any of the 4 items on the consent agenda? See none, look to council for a motion.
Thank you, Your Honor. I make a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
Second, thank you, Ms. Gabriel. All in favor of the motion signify by stating aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Motion carries. Assistant Chief Kinzer.
Thank you, Mayor, Council. I'm pleased to present to you Chris Albrecht and Will Watson, who recently have completed their 1-year probation with Kalispell Fire Department. I'm recommending that Council confirm these two with position of firefighter for the City of Kalispell. Firefighter Chris Albrecht, on my right, was born and raised in North Texas, but has always felt like his heart has been here in the mountains. He is married to his high school sweetheart and has 3 amazing boys. He began his fire career 16 years ago and shortly afterwards became a paramedic. After much prayer and consideration, his family decided to take a leap of faith and move to Montana. According to Chris, this past year has been one for the books, both exciting and scary at times, making new friends and learning to navigate life in a new place. Chris and his family are excited to call Kalispell home and to officially be a part of the Kalispell Fire Department. Chris brings a lot of knowledge and experience to the department. He always has a smile on his face and a good attitude. On behalf of the Kalispell Fire Department, we are pleased to welcome him to our fire department family.
Thank you.
Do you want to pen them both at the end?
Same time, yeah.
Okay. Yes?
Yeah.
Okay. This is Will. Firefighter Will Watson is a fourth-generation Montanan. He grew up in Missoula and feels blessed to have an amazing family. His father served 27 years with the Missoula City Fire Department. As he was growing up, he had no idea that he would one day follow in his footsteps. He attended college for a few years and then decided he needed a change of direction. He began to pursue a professional cooking career and worked in both Montana and Alaska. 3 years ago, he decided to join South Kalispell Fire Department and then made the move over to Evergreen Fire and Rescue, where he was able to pursue becoming a paramedic. The best part of his career so far has been the incredible and passionate people he has been blessed to work with. Kalispell has a special place in his heart, and he feels honored to serve the city of Kalispell for years to come. Will brings a positive energy to the department with his abundance of enthusiasm. He is dedicated to furthering his knowledge in all aspects of the job, and we are pleased to welcome you into our fire department family.
Thank you.
And Mayor Johnson will pin your badges on you.
This is ultimately more dangerous because the police always show up with their Kevlar on for me. I'm glad that you have help here. There's some paramedics around, so. Welcome aboard to the family.
Thank you, sir.
You get 3 boys at home and 1 wife. Yes, sir. Make sure you get home every night. The community needs you, they need you more than us.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Watch out for yourself. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. You're taller. This is you. Boy.
Lean back.
No, you're good. This was Mr. Graham doing this. You'd need a chair.
Nice.
Never make it as a surgeon. There we go. All right, well, welcome aboard. Thank you for you and your family. This is a great tradition that we continue on. So look forward to having us serving our community. But remember to return to your family right after shift.
Thank you, sir.
All right, thank you. You guys want to say a couple words? We love hearing from you. Come on, let's go. Go ahead. They can be short and sweet. but-
Okay. Just want to thank all of my new fire family and my family most of all, and thank God for just everything that you all have done for me. And like I said, it was a life-changing event, crazy move, moving across the country into the unknown. But it's been an awesome adventure, and I have many years to look forward to, and I'm very excited to work for the city of Kalispell. So, thank you.
These last few years of my life have hands down been the best I've ever had. The experiences, the people I've met, I really wouldn't trade it for the world. And it makes me really proud that I get to step into the same career as my father. And we just get so much to talk about these days. And I couldn't have done it without their support, without the support of my amazing and beautiful girlfriend. And most importantly, these amazing people that I get to work with every day that just allow me to be myself and show up and have a good time at work. So thank you, City, Mayor. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Let's stand up and give them. Okay, at this point in time, I'm going to ask for any public comment on items not on the agenda. Ask anyone who wants to give us comment to step forward, state your name, and give comments for the record. This is for items not on the agenda. Okay.
Are we at H yet?
Not yet. Nope, we're getting there. Seeing no public comment, we're going to close that. We're going to move on to the first action item this evening, which is Resolution 6228, Kalispell Golf Association lease. This resolution considers authorizing the city manager to enter into a lease agreement with Kalispell Golf Association. Mr. Russell, presentation.
Yeah, Mayor and Council, maybe a month and a half ago, we had a work session related to a potential updated lease. It's coming to the end of the current one, but also had requested from the KGA to extend that in advance based on desire to do some financing for some improvements that they're looking to do on the course. So different components within the lease, excuse me, we're amending it to a 30-year term, incorporating the language from the 2014 MOU that discussed the capital improvements and the KGA taking the responsibility for those, and also in exchange for retaining the lease payment. Adding language for a pedestrian trail connection, if necessary, through the property, increasing the threshold for improvements to the property from $25,000 to $75,000, and increasing the thresholds for changing rates from 10% to 20%. During the work session, there were some questions related to the history of the lease and some of the land related to it. So just within that period, provide some information related to some of the deeds that were associated with the grounds, where a majority of the ground is under deed restriction for the use as a golf course, and also a little bit of a history related to the improvements, how the majority of that was done without city involvement through there. So I think those were some of the questions that were present through there. And with that, we'd recommend approval of it. I know we do have representatives from KGA here if there's any questions, but again, our recommendation is to approve that resolution for the extended agreement.
When we get to public comment. So any questions for staff? Okay, now public comment on the lease.
I was nervous until everybody left. My name is Teresa Williams. I live on 861 North Main, and you drive by my house to go to either the golf course, Lawrence Park, or behind my area, which is, there's a cul-de-sac back there that we had a block party in, and this kind of came up out of, I didn't know that it was happening, and it's just like, I think that the last one, since I moved in 2007, was 2009, and I missed it. But I just want you guys to know that I have a little bit organized. Okay, so from 2007 to the present, I've lived on North Main, and they're requesting a 30-year lease, which is kind of excessive, but I understand the banking. But our neighborhood on Northeast, in that little neighborhood that crosses about Cameron 9, and beyond, behind me and everywhere along Main Street, I haven't had time to go and talk to these people, but I know that we had a block party and major issues concerned multiple divisions and departments within the city because of the safety of North Main. North Main is a egress to, of course, the much improved Lawrence Park. And we do have golf balls hit, of course, our property. And then some people have been hit by the golf balls. So safety first, and it's just that we need a taller fence and we need a net. And I know that if you live by the golf course, you're going to get some golf balls in your yard. And your house is going to get hit, and your car is going to get hit if you park it in the front. And I understand that the Cameron 9 is a very great asset for our young people that want to golf. and learn how to golf, which I don't know how to golf.
Max Headroom visited.
I'm not here, okay. I really would like for you to pause and look. And I know that I've talked with Chad on the phone? Okay. And previously, I have talked with all components of, that I needed to. And I had talked to the transportation department, wanted a 25-mile-an-hour sign on that road from, the big area, and then you just come on in, and it's wide open spaces after the frustration of Main Street. So the neighbor has a little 25-mile-an-hour sign if you look when you're driving, but there's no speed limit sign. And so with that, there's a pedestrian sign that was put up a couple months ago on my neighbor's property. And I have also notified the police department about the speeding, and the solution to that was put up the little radar sign. You are going 25 miles an hour. And that consisted of the ones that do like to race along there. Let's see how fast we can get it to go, okay? And I know it sounds kind of ridiculous, but when you live there as long as I have and you're just going, oh my goodness, I've watched people drive on the sidewalk on the flathead or the golf course side. I'm just so afraid of that area and there being a fatality without either or. So, I mean, I know we've done some really good building, but the three-way stop, crosswalk, taller fence, and of course, this is kind of ridiculous, but we have to listen to everything. The Flathead Electric Department, when a tree goes down in the golf course, either whether we have the huge windstorm, which we didn't have anything the last windstorm, but our power goes out, and there's 27 units on this grid, and so of course we are last to get our power back on. I was taking care of my mother at the time of the big blowdown, and on oxygen, and her bed, and everything else. That was not very pretty because all I got was, well, we can't get you out there. There's only 27 units. Next door to me is elderly lady that is on oxygen and a wound vac, and she's having home health services come. And when the power goes out, she's definitely affected. Anybody is affected on that 27 houses. Now, I know that you guys are not having anything to do with the Flathead Electric Department, but there is a fence, and there's trees, and then there's power lines. And so, the accountability occurs when we have arborists assessing all the trees by the power lines, or we get us off that grid and move those power. I don't know what the solutions are. All I can tell you is that I'm trying to come up with some solutions. And I know that whatever we would come up with wouldn't be popular for everyone. I know the sidewalk up to the hospital area is needed. I've seen people coming with their possessions down from the hospital when I'm driving on that street. I don't know how the golf course is run. I don't know anything about how you make things more of a not easy, I know that sometimes when I complain too much, they'll change the direction of the whole thing, and we don't get golf balls that much, but I don't know what to do. The traffic, the safety of the pedestrians, the residents, and anybody that happens to be walking along that lovely walkway we have. We have people that want that walkway extended all the way to the golf course. So, they want to be taken off the grid of those 27 homes, and nobody came, I don't think, from my neighborhood. So it's just one of those things that I don't want to sneak by without really coming to terms and addressing the facts or my observations, actually. and that you really think about signing a 30-year lease without some major safety issues on the only entrance to the golf course, which is my street. And I thank you, and please reconsider. Doug? Russell? Everybody, please, because it's just, I mean, we do need elderly people walk there. It's a wonderful neighborhood. I'm not arguing about the golf course. I love the golf course. Love the wintertime. Nobody drives by. But thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment on the KGA lease? See, I'd look to council for a motion. Go ahead, Ms. Dahlman.
We'll have a motion for an amendment.
Well, I need a motion on the table first before we can amend anything. So if you want to put something on the table, then we can.
Sure. I move resolution 6228, resolution approving 30-year lease renewal between the city of Kalispell and the Kalispell Golf Association for the property commonly known as the Buffalo Hill Golf Course.
Second, thank you, Ms. Gabriel. Okay, discussion on the motion.
I guess I would have a question for city manager based off of public comment as it pertains to tall fence or a net in that area, and as it pertains to the agreement with the golf course. Is that an issue that gets taken to the golf association, or is that something that comes to us here?
Well, the KGA is charged with the operations of the golf course, so they're liable for anything related to that.
Well, we could put it as a condition of the lease if we chose to, correct?
You have that option to put something in there, doesn't mean they're going to agree to it.
Right.
I know that, I don't know, it just seems like I know that in the past, I guess I can't really qualify or quantify the discussions that have been had about nets before in the past, whether it was public comment that we had down in Village Greens, or if it was even about, maybe it was the last time we did this, there was just a discussion about nets. And so I guess I never really knew where that went at the time. But I don't know, I'm thinking out loud here.
Other discussion on the motion? Mr. Dowd?
Yeah, I appreciate the public comment we received tonight. And as far as the road goes, I don't think the lease actually impacts that. That would be something that the city would have to move on outside of the lease. So we can definitely have those discussions if we want to take a look at that. And I'm a little bit cautious about the net thing because I've been involved with something like this in the past where it became like a hazard for the birds as well. And also, if it blows over, is it going to impact the power lines and stuff? I think that's a bigger discussion with Flathead Electric and the golf course and possibly us as the ultimate landowners. But, I would not be in favor of adding it as a condition of the lease, but I would be in favor of opening a discussion to see if we can do something to reduce the impact on the neighborhood.
How could we do that without it being a condition of the lease, though?
Well, I mean, the golf course, I don't know. I haven't had a personal discussion with the staff there or the people that run the golf course. But I would think that they would be open to discussion with the neighbors if they had a complaint about the golf course itself.
Because Doug, didn't you just say that that would be the
Mike.
liability of the golf course?
Your mic.
No?
Mike.
Oh, sorry. Oh, he's looking at me.
Yep, under section 6, the lessee agrees to maintain the above property in good condition. Let's see what else it has in there. Just looking for the insurance clause.
I can't hear him.
Section 11, all costs of operation, including costs for providing supplies, equipment, tools, labor, and other items, and the entire cost of maintaining and operating the golf course, clubhouse, and other appurtenances shall be the responsibility of the lessee. And they obviously have the liability insurance clause within there. And typically, anytime you're talking about damage from a golf course, it falls back on the golf course. And actually, I believe in Steve may have a better idea, but I think if there is an errant ball, it's actually the responsibility of the individual hitting that. I'm not,
But they don't stop.
Other discussion?
Did you have a motion?
I would like to propose a motion of amendment.
Okay.
I would like to propose, instead of the 30-year lease, I forget which number that's on, I'd like to go down to 10, if that's possible.
Second.
Okay, one discussion on your motion?
For me, 30 years just seems, I mean, we don't know what's going to happen to Kalispell 30 years from now, and considering that the past lease was 20, I just think 30 is too much. It's too long.
Mr. Hunter?
Yeah, I would echo that, I think the trail is kind of an example. When I came on to the city council about 5 years ago, I sensed a desire, and I was hearing a lot about wanting a trail through the system, through the golf course, but we couldn't do it because of the lease, and the lease was until 29. And so we didn't have that opportunity, I felt like. And so I agree that 30 years is a long time to wait to be able to make changes if something comes up. In terms of kind of the financing issue, obviously they were able to make it work with 20, but I feel like now that we've learned that there was conditions on much of the land, ensuring that it's used as a golf course, as long as the city owns it, and the fact that it's been in the city as a golf course for close to 100 years, at least parts of it, that should give lenders the confidence that it's going to be a golf course for a long time into the future. So I think having a 10-year with flexibility to make changes as things arise makes sense.
Yeah, 30 years and not having the ability to renegotiate just seems a bit much to me. So I'm proposing 10. Thank you.
Mr. Russell, the lease could be amended a year from now.
yeah, the trail is more of an issue with MDT. KGA and the city's been in discussion about the potential trail being in there, and they've never came out and objected to any potential change or modification in that time. It's been more of, it does design with MDT, and, we put it out, I think, in 2-year budget ago, and put it out for bid and didn't have anyone bid on it. So it wasn't KGA's resistance to that stopped anything with the trail. They've always been aware and amenable to those discussions, and so
Okay.
that's just as a correction of that component of it.
Yeah,
And
I appreciate that. But in terms of, you're right. I mean, it could be amended any time, but you have to have the agreement to open up that amendment. Whereas if it expires, you then have that open ability to, make certain conditions of re-signing it. So it's a little bit more flexible, a little bit easier to make those changes than if you're going and saying, we want to amend this that benefits the city if the golf course sees they have no reason to do it, they'll be like, no, no, we'll wait till it expires and see where we're at.
Yeah, and I can listen, Mr. Hunter, to all the reasoning you gave for going to a 10-year, to me, saying, make it a 99-year. It's been a golf course for 100 years, kind of like what we have with 99-year leases up on the state school land. Who knows what's going to happen in Consumption Junction in the next 50 years or 100 years, but things change. I look at the definition of going 30 years, it gives some stability for them with financing to look at larger scale projects, whatever they may need to do to rebuild, knowing that in 10 years, it can't get pulled. If I'm a lender sitting there going, there's a window in 10 years where this may not be renewed by the city and this reverts back to the property owners, that's a little harder to lend against. So I can use your same arguments and look at it going, it could be a longer lease.
But then within 5 years, that argument falls apart because they're not within that 30-year window. Then they only have 25 years. And so is the financing opportunity with 30 years only within that first few years of the lease, and then that benefit disappears?
Loans on commercial, gives them a window with 20 years.
And 20 years would be better than 30, in my opinion.
And then there's the stipulation that, there's the increase to $75,000 that they don't have to come before the city for any approval on the improvements to the property. So that was what kind of made me question it all. It was just like, okay, well, why do we need 30 years if they have this additional piece going up to $75,000?
Well, just kind of discussing at $75,000, we moved it from 25 to 75, largely looking at what's happened with costs, but it's their money. We don't use any city money within this whole operation. The golf course fails to exist, see, it doesn't exist any longer, that property goes back to the people who gave the land to the golf course. So really the city has no skin in this game. This is really one of those leases, much like what we did with the airport, modeled the lease at the airport to get it off the back of the taxpayers. This lease keeps it off the back of the taxpayers. They're just looking for a little more of a commitment from the city on the term of the lease to give them more flexibility within their operations. To me, it's not an abnormal or, a large ask, in my opinion, looking at it. But,
My opinion differs.
right. That's why there's 9 of us up here. Any other discussion on the amendment?
I think what I'd say is it's a golf course. It's going to be a golf course. To me, it doesn't matter if it's a 30-year or a 50-year lease. That's what it's going to be if it goes and helps in creating certainty for what they need to do to, plan for their future. Then that's what I would support. So I'm going to stick with the 30-year. But I don't really necessarily see the benefit of dropping it to a 10. So I'm gonna have to not agree with that.
I just want to clarify in case my comments from the work session are confusing this conversation a little bit, but I recognize the donation conditions and that it's going to be a golf course. And so the idea of it not being a golf course is, I realize, is off the table. For me, the term lease is more about the terms of that relationship going into the future, not whether it's a golf course or not a golf course.
That's not where I was taking it from.
Okay.
Other discussion on the amendment?
I guess I take a look at it from someone who has, a large piece of property in Kalispell now, and knowing what it would take if I had to pull the trigger on a major project today, which I do, but how long it takes government sometimes to make those wheels turn to that is exactly why I think having a 30-year is better at this point, gives that 10-year buffer for them to figure that out and gives them assurancy for a 20-year. So I'm all in favor of 30 at this point.
Okay.
Other discussion on the amendment?
I probably have less fruitful comments to make here, but this is a great example of why government should never own land. A bunch of amateurs up here talking about leases and land use where we don't really understand how everything fits together and what that 30-year might be for, or what. I mean, it would be very pleasant if this went back to the private entities and they contract with the golf course. But since we're in this position, I'm for, unless staff has a recommendation counter, which they don't, because they want us to approve the lease, I would go with the 30-year.
Other discussion? A roll call vote on the amendment?
Counselor Gabrielle,
Just on the amendment? No.
Counselor Graham,
No.
Counselor Dowd,
No,
Counselor Dahlman,
Yes.
Counselor Hunter,
Aye.
Counselor Nunley,
No.
Mayor Johnson.
No. Back to the original motion? Mr. Hunter?
Yeah, I have a couple motions as well. And the first isn't pertaining to the lease payment and that arrangement. Given the fact that this is 240 acres of city property, not a small amount of land in the city, and the fact that this is, as I stated previously, a fairly exclusive sport that's played by a small number of people and relative to the population. And the 2014 agreement about the lease payments is not something I'm not sure what went behind that decision, but it's not one I agree with. I think that maintaining the infrastructure up there that they use and benefit from, it makes sense to me that they would pay that's not something extra. And they use and benefit from it for at least 5 months out of every year. And as we know, it's going to be like that pretty much forever. It is going to be a golf course forever. And so I think there should be a lease payment to the city for this kind of exclusive use of city property. So I would move to remove the final paragraph in section 4 referencing the 2014 agreement and base the lease payment on, to the best of our abilities, market rates.
Mayor and Council, if I may, removing that just puts us back in the realm of capital improvements within the lease.
Say that one more time. I'm sorry, I didn't understand you.
That 2014 agreement took us out of discussions on a previous agreement that held us liable for some of the capital improvements within the lease.
Right, so I'd have to go back and read the language, but my proposal.
I'm just saying that you take that out,
Right,
we're in a much different situation, a much different negotiation. That was a long-term discussion, multiple years of confusion related to what was going on, where, the lease payment came back, but then we had potential obligations. They took over all those obligations with that lease payment staying within them. It was a good outcome of that discussion.
and I want them to continue to take over those obligations and pay a lease payment.
Okay, so you have a motion to add a lease payment at market rate. Do we have a second?
Sure, I'll second it.
Okay, any other discussion?
Yeah, I certainly remember having those discussions back in 2014 about capital improvement projects on the Golf Association and, who was responsible for what and everything. It also kind of dovetailed to conversations that we had, which I think were after that with the airport. The solution was what we're looking at, and for the last 10 years, it's worked out very well. I believe that the Golf Association attracts a lot of value to the city, a lot of economic value that we benefit from through the revenue generation to the city through businesses and hotel stays. And they take it all over. So I'm certainly not going to support this. I don't see it at all. But I also know in the last 10 years it has not been a problem, and in 2014 there were problems. So I don't want to go back to that.
I'd say we,
Remember correctly, a lot of that dealt with the flooding that was down on the river that was creating a lot of issues and a lot of potential expense for the city exposure at that point in time.
yeah, I don't have the benefit of those discussions. Perhaps I like to go back and watch those discussions. I would say that we gain a lot of economic value from all sorts of businesses in town, but we don't give them property tax breaks because of it. So I don't think a lease break, that justifies a lease break either.
Any other discussion on the amendment?
The only other thing I wanted to bring up, Your Honor, is that, the exclusivity part of this is something that I don't think we should even engage with, because anybody is able to golf there. Not everybody golfs. Anybody is able to ride their bike. Not everybody bikes. So it would also be putting things like bike lanes in the crosshairs if we start talking about like, well, not everybody does it, right? So I think, obviously it's cost prohibitive to start up a new hobby in golf. But I just like to exclude that when I'm considering the motion. And, I also think that we're once again trying to alter something that a lot of people put a lot of time into creating. And that clause is probably there for a very good reason. We heard a couple of those. I was unaware of its history as well. So I'm not going to be supporting the amendment.
Again?
Yeah, just want to respond to that. It doesn't cost any money to use a bike lane. They charge $1,000 for a season pass golfing. They charge over $80 at peak season to golf one round of golf. So I see it as considerably different in terms of that.
Yeah, they don't get funded by the taxpayer for their golf course.
They get free city land
And they operate it. Not always cash flow.
to their benefit.
It would certainly make it more exclusive if we put something on that would raise those rates so much. It would make it more of an exclusivity. So I've talked to a number of the neighbors also in the area that live around it, and I absolutely see the benefit of it from a health standpoint. Not just people that live next to that, but also people that drive in from out of the area that go there and golf and ski. So I can't support raising rates like that.
We'll say that was the status quo prior to 2014. So, they got by with those rates prior to 2014.
So Ryan, you say to their benefit, as far as rates, whatever the cost is, you say to their benefit for what they charge to go through and operate the golf course. But do you know what it costs to operate the golf course? And do we not benefit from it as a city existing?
We benefit from all the businesses in our community.
We're talking about the golf course.
Yeah.
Do we benefit from the golf course?
Yeah, I agree. I believe we do.
Okay, thank
But-
you. Because you also pointed out there's other places in the city that go through and we don't give them tax breaks and stuff, but we're talking about a golf course lease. What other places do we have leases with that go through and benefit the city that we're going through and talking about? You haven't pointed to anything, is what I'm saying.
Yeah, the fact that we don't lease on the airport, you mentioned the airport, I'd be interested in looking at that. Maybe we should charge a lease for the airport.
You want to open that wound again?
I'm just saying, you're saying an example and what's the equivalent? I'm not saying I'm opening that up. I'm talking about the golf course, but in terms of the equivalency argument,
The equivalent is that they're both the same. Right now, they are both being treated the same. That's the equivalent. it takes exposure away from the city taxpayer. That's worth its weight in gold on
Liability?
both of them. Yes.
Okay, any other discussion on the motion? Have a
On the
roll call
amendment to the
vote.
motion.
This is on the amendment to the motion.
Counselor Gabrielle,
No.
Counselor Graham,
No.
Counselor Dowd,
No?
Counselor Dahlman,
Aye.
Counselor Hunter,
Aye.
Counselor Nunley,
No.
Mayor Johnson.
Let me think about it. No. Mr. Hunter?
Yeah, second one. In regards to the trail up the hill, again, it's city property, and so I bristle a little bit at the idea that we want a trail to go in that affects their golf operation. That's them. That's their issue. Now, I think to be fair and reasonable about it, that we split the costs. I'm uncomfortable with the idea that we have no idea what it would cost to shift their golf operation if we were to do this. We already know the trail operation is going to be really expensive. I don't know when we apply for grants from state or federal entities to try to pay for that at some point in the future, whether or not shifting the golf course would be eligible for those funds. So I worry we risk jeopardizing that project or delaying it because of a unknown cost factor with shifting the golf course and any impacts there. So I think at the very least we should split those costs. So I would revise the fifth sentence in paragraph 7A to say that the costs associated with any course realignment will be split between the city and the lessee.
Okay, have a second?
Second.
Okay, discussion on it?
Your Honor, if I could just say one thing. So the golf course was built under the terms of the lease whenever it was at that specific time. So they made an investment according to that lease arrangement that was there in all efforts. It's just something to keep in mind.
And we have a new lease before us.
I'm sorry, Doug. I'm having a real hard time understanding you.
Sure, no, not a problem. So the construction of the golf facility years ago was made under whatever arrangement and agreement they had. Now we're asking them to potentially move that based on a project to come along later. Just something to keep in mind of what we're asking with this amendment.
I hear that. When I read through the agreement and then I saw that full amount would be the city of Kalispell's responsibility for a much needed walkway, I thought that it would be better if it was split between the two entities. So I can see where you're coming from and I appreciate you bringing that up, because when we don't know where that walkway is going to go. I mean, the one that's the hole that's right close to 93 there. I mean, what if they have to move a whole entire green? I mean, that could be big. So that's where I'm coming from. I think the walkway, in my mind, is probably the most important thing, and I understand that Kalispell Golf Association has agreed to make that amendment, but we just don't know, how that's going to pan out.
So then devil's advocate,
Sure.
this was Walgreens and we wanted to put a walkway in because it's in the way. And we were working with them on approvals, say conditional use permit. But we're going to put in a condition of that conditional use permit that if we have to move your building for a walkway, I know it's going to interrupt your operations, but you're going to pay half that. It's not essentially a taking, because you got to understand this is an operation. They're operating with that facility in its current place. It was built there under the prior lease. It's a historic use of that property. So you look at any historic use of property and say, well, we're gonna put a walkway in now and you gotta pay half. Is that equitable? And I understand it's leased property from the, but look at the investment, look at the commitment that put in. Look at any other business. Would you ask that of any other business? Would you ask that of a homeowner? Your home is encroaching upon the right of way. We move the right of way. We change this, but now you gotta move half your house or cut it down and you're gonna pay half the bill.
But in that case, you'd be condemning private land and taking it. In this case, it's already city land. And it's under,
Operation, you're condemning part of where they operate though.
but it's city land, that's, the only premise of it is under a lease that we're now have before us.
Yeah, well, and dare I say, it's city land until it's no longer a golf course. So I understand the special nature of the property as well. It's not like it reverts back to us and it's our land.
I mean, if there were an argument that they can't continue with the golf course because they have to shift it a few feet over, that would be something, but, you know, that's
No,
not why I'm
all
here.
I'm asking, just be
Yeah.
careful what you ask for, because I can't wait to start asking some things then, when we start expanding highways around here.
I don't see it as an equivalent situation, though.
So as the lessee, they have a certain amount of right to that property as they have it leased. This obviously would be a disruption to that. And on top of that, the golf course doesn't get a benefit from the walkway. Right? The city does. And asking them to pay for half of something that they don't get a benefit from, I think is unfair also. And so, you know, once again, I don't think I can support your amendment.
Other discussion on the amendment? Have a roll call vote?
Counselor Gabrielle?
No.
Counselor Graham?
No.
Counselor Dowd?
No.
Counselor Dahlman?
Aye.
Counselor Hunter?
Aye.
Counselor Nunley?
No.
Mayor Johnson?
No. Motion fails. Back to the original motion. Other discussion?
I'll just speak to, you know, I don't think I'll support this, I understand it's gonna be a golf course. I would like to see the trail in there, but, I just think there could be better terms of the lease, so I'll be showing my disapproval with a vote against it.
Other discussion? Have a roll call vote?
Counselor Gabrielle?
Aye.
Counselor Graham?
Aye.
Counselor Dowd?
Aye.
Counselor Dahlman?
Nay.
Counselor Hunter?
Nay.
Counselor Nunley?
Aye.
Mayor Johnson?
Aye, motion carries. Second item, amend downtown and west side core area urban renewal plans to include the workforce housing as eligible for tax increment financing. These items consider amendments to the downtown plan and west side urban renewal core area plan to include the creation of workforce housing. These ordinances were tabled indefinitely in October 2022. So we have ordinance 1927 and ordinance 1928. Ask for, let me see, since these were tabled, they just come back or do we
Put
ask?
new ordinance numbers on them.
We put new ordinance numbers on them. Got it. Okay. So, Mr. Russell, can I get a presentation on both?
Yeah, Mayor and Council, I'll turn it over to our Development Service Director, Jared Nygren, who also presented the work session on this. And so Jared, if you want to.
Yeah, good evening, Mayor and Council. Before you have ordinance 1927, which would amend the downtown urban renewal plan, and ordinance 1928, which would amend the west side core area urban renewal plan to include workforce housing as an eligible project. The ordinance before you do not fund a project. Any future projects that would request assistance for this funding would have to come back through the Urban Renewal Agency and the council. So this does not fund a particular project. It just makes workforce housing an eligible project for someone to apply for in the future through the urban renewal process. The council had a work session on September 9th to go over this, as well as, like I said, it originally started in October 3rd of 2022. I would note that the ordinances before you do include the area median income range of to 120% area median income. And that's based off of how the staff report and recommendation went through not only the planning commission, but the urban renewal agency at that time. So if council does want to amend the ordinances to reflect current state law, you would need to do that on both ordinances. And the state law is section 96143 of Montana Code annotated, which creates an eligible household between 60 and 140% area median income, whereas right now the ordinances before you are 80 to 120. So you could leave them alone, or you could choose to amend them to reflect state law. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for staff? Mr. Dowd?
Yes, so Jared, or whoever, what would we need to change anything else to make future TIFs have this included, or is it TIF by TIF? Do we have general rules for TIFs that we need to include this in as well?
Well, if we establish a new district, we would establish new policies to go with that
Okay,
district.
so we don't have a generic TIF outline. We have.
Yeah, we've adopted specific policies for those districts. Now, I think they mirror but they're different. So like they don't apply to the TED, the industrial rail park. But these ones do apply for both tax increment districts. And if we established another tax increment district, we would also establish policies related to it.
Okay, thanks.
Mr. Graham?
Thank you, Your Honor. Jared, so we're talking about the AMI, however that discussion goes, where we land on that. But what I'm wondering is a couple of things. That can, by the council and bringing it up and amending it, it can be adjusted, obviously. Later on in the future council come and adjust that.
Well, I mean, I would obviously at that time encourage, obviously the state came up with the definition, even you recall when it was postponed indefinitely in 2022, I don't think there was a concurrence generally on what the range should be.
Right.
So I think you still would need to meet the further goals of urban renewal and urban renewal law. So you're going to need, a council would have to take that into consideration to amend it. In this case, the state has given some guidance because they included workforce housing as an eligible infrastructure expense. And as well, since then they've defined it. So I think, the council would be fine mirroring that. To go up or down, I would, you would have to
I'm
make
hoping
findings.
that it would be more concrete. I'm not suggesting that would be the case. I guess a better question is, if this goes in, does it stay where it's at? Like, is it, pretty solid?
These are policies adopted by the council. So next week, council could ask to change it.
Exactly, okay.
Which would require amending the urban renewal plan, and you'd have to go through the process to do that.
but
The planning
it's-
commission, urban renewal, there'd be new ordinances. So it's not like, you just do it real quick. There's a process that the council would have to go through to do that. But if the council chose, they could move forward with that.
Okay. And then, I guess the question that I would have is, what kind of protection would there be by doing this and having this go in? Obviously, the benefit of doing this goes and creates the workforce housing that was talked about to go and help out the businesses. But these types of projects probably don't carry what I guess we would go through and have talked about the biggest, best use as far as what's coming back into the district as far as revenue. So what's the protection from keeping that top heavy and with the affordable housing or workforce housing, keeping that from going top heavy and taking all that increment and using it for that, but not getting as much of it back?
Every project would be case by case, and the council would be able to analyze that at those times. Council doesn't have to authorize, just because it's an eligible expense, the council wouldn't have to approve a project requesting it. So it really would depend on the factors of the project, how much increments are going to generate or how much increment it's not going to generate, the particular property, what would the highest and best use be. So really it's going to be a case by case basis. And anytime there's going to be a project requesting the funding, the council would be able to look at the facts of that case and make the decision at that point in time. They could choose to fund one, they could choose to fund multiple projects, or, like I said, so it really would be depend on the specifics of each particular project. History shows it's not like we're going to have a floodgate of these projects coming in. It may be one over the next couple of years, it may be zero, but in any case, the council would have the ability to look at the facts of that case and make the decision at that time whether it was something they wanted to participate in or not.
I don't have any questions, but I'm just glad that we're voting on this tonight because I think it's important for us to have this as being part of TIF allocation. If I had my druthers, I would change the numbers drastically. I'm probably gonna want to amend to 60 to 140 from the state definition. But other than that, I'm just glad that we're talking about it tonight.
Any other questions?
No other questions.
Just want to clarify a couple things. Just one, we're basically implementing this because the state allows it, correct?
That's correct.
And in the past, the state has looked at TIF uses that didn't necessarily generate the increment coming back into a district or for questionable uses. So TIF has always been kind of under attack legislatively, correct?
Yeah, I mean, it goes back to the whole concept of a TIF is you're paying for those improvements through the income generated through that increment. And I was just trying to pull up our TIF policies because I think that's actually put in there in terms of criteria for evaluation is the generation of income to pay for projects. But that's the whole, foundation of tax increment financing is you're going to do a project that the increment develops should be able to pay for that project itself. Now, not all of those are there, especially when you talk public infrastructure. But then you're looking at those other concepts of laying the infrastructure down to generate the commercial business, as we have seen like with the Parkline Trail and the development of multifamily housing. But in the overall concept, especially of private projects like this, and we even have that in there, does that project pay for itself if they're receiving tax increment financing? Now, council has that leverage to evaluate projects on a case-by-case basis, but that is the old concept of tax increment financing.
So, and those who give up the increment are the schools in the county, correct? The increase in tax revenue.
The county, we collect from the different bodies. The school district is funded through a formula at the state.
Okay.
So it's a different component, and they've put in things on voted levies are not part of the increment anymore. So any voted levy that the school does not take out of there. So we get the increment that they otherwise would have generated, but they don't lose out on any funding.
Got it. I'd just like to clarify that. So what we're really looking at is adding an element that, as I said before, there's a quantitative analysis and a qualitative analysis. So looking at adding the workforce housing, it seems where the state came down is they want to have that qualitative consideration that we add more workforce housing and have it be more affordable. So as we look at these raw numbers, I just like to go back over it because I've been chastised in the past by some local legislators about using TIF. Then they opened it up to use it for this, which is a little more, as I say, qualitative. So I'm just looking forward, if we do see a project come through, I'm looking forward to having a couple of them try to take a bite out of my hide because I'm going to take a bite right back. So, any other questions for staff? Any public comment on ordinances 1927 and 1928?
Go ahead.
Hi, Russ Miller. I live in Evergreen, but I grew up in Missoula. I was born in Missoula. When I heard about this tax increment stuff, I cringed. I cringed. I brought with me a 2,000-word essay. Most people really don't understand tax increment financing. Any of you, Sam, Chad, Mark, you know how to get a hold of me through the Central Committee. I can give the email address where you can go and watch just over a 2-hour presentation trying to explain it. You may or may not understand it at the end. It's complicated. So, tax increment, who ultimately pays the taxes? Me, probably a few people in here. I'm sure most of you pay taxes too. When these go sour, usually through a certain amount of corruption, which I hope does not happen here, it all ends up on the backs of the citizens. The fixed income retired and those in the lower income brackets pay the worst price. A Missoula policeman had to move from where he was in Tololo so he could afford to stay in the area and keep his job. I grew up around cops. Due to one of my friends having an uncle on the police force, got to know him pretty well. And you know how many of those guys work second jobs to make ends meet? A lot of them. They work their tail off. So it's sad to see people, I know 3 people, who in a 12-month period moved in the Missoula area 6 times due to the fact their landlord said, I just got my tax bill, your rent went up. And they couldn't afford it, and they moved. And it happened again. One gal, 6 times in 10 months. Tax increment gone totally wrong, and in this case, corrupt. So I just want to warn you, I'm dead set against it up here. Came up here in '85. Nice little place. It was nice not to have a malfunction junction in town, if any of you know Missoula. Yeah. I brought 5 copies. The gentleman who wrote this was one of the people who's been battling the city council down there for a number of years and had threats against his life and everything else because they didn't want the public to hear any of it. Public doesn't even understand most of it. That's the problem. I see Sam's nodding his head over there. He's maybe kind of familiar with what I'm talking about. And this was a good 2,000-word essay. I've only brought 5 copies, and then I'm going to wrap it up and go home and maybe watch the end of the Chiefs game.
I'm going to give it to Amy over here, Russ, and she'll scan it and email it to us.
I'd like you and you and you to at least get a copy. Note that?
We'll scan it in and
Okay.
send it to all of them.
The rest of us.
We'll all get one.
Anyway,
Up there.
get over real good.
All right. Thanks, Russ.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Kim Morisaki. I am the Executive Director for Northwest Montana Community Land Trust, which owns currently 54 houses in the city limits of Kalispell. And I'm also a relatively new business owner on 2nd Avenue, 248 2nd Avenue West, which is the Glacier Monuments building across the street from the post office and kitty corner from Black Rifle Coffee. So I'm also a landlord. And so looking at using your TIF fund to update the workforce housing that I have or the building that I have in some way or another in the future. But I'm really here to just encourage you, whether it's up to 120% area median income or 140% area median income is a little bit immaterial. The fact that you're doing this can make a huge difference in the ability of people to bring more affordable housing, whether it's home ownership or rental, to the community. And just to kind of tell you why I think it might be a little bit immaterial, whether it's 120% or 140%. The land trust for the last decade has been doing it up to 120%. We recently upped it to 140% because our clients, we felt like we were giving ourselves more room to maneuver because housing prices are going like this, while area wages are going like this. And so this gap in between them is getting larger, and we felt like expanding our ability to go up to 140% was still really working with people who are workforce housing type people. The one thing I'd love to encourage you to think about in the future, as you're considering case by case each project you might do in the future, is to really think about permanent affordability rather than one-time projects. So if you're going to take the taxpayers' money and you're thinking of it as an investment in permanent affordability, that could look like deed restrictions on home ownership, or ground leases in the case of the land trust, or in the case of rentals, it could be a certain percentage of apartments in a larger building are at 80% and a certain percentage are at 100%. You know, just like the communities that probably all of you have grown up in, and I certainly did, not every person in the neighborhood had the same income level, but that's actually healthy. And you can look at that in terms of these projects that you do in the future as well, is that it's good to have people who have various types of incomes living in the same neighborhoods or the same apartment buildings. So as you're looking at projects, I just encourage you to think about how can you mix in a little more affordability and maybe make those permanent, whether that's homeownership or rental. So I really applaud you for considering this change, and looking forward to working with you in the future. Thanks.
Thank you. Further public comment, none? Okay, I'd like to do is pick up ordinance 1927, amend downtown urban renewal plan. Look for a motion on that. Go ahead, Ms. Dahlman.
I move ordinance number 1927, an ordinance amending the urban renewal district encompassing portions of downtown Kalispell as delineated in the downtown plan amendment to the City of Kalispell Growth Policy Plan at 2035.
Second.
Second, thank you, Mr. Dowd. Any discussion on the motion?
Tried to get in here first before we start talking about the AMI. So I had a good discussion at the Montana League of Cities with a couple experts just last week. And the state, I would recommend us, unless you want to fight the state, which I'm all for, but I would recommend that we follow the what the state has defined. And I would also suggest that we don't try to take it lower than 60%, because that goes into an area that the state defines as low-income housing, which is not available in TIFs. So I think 60 should be the basement, but I would suggest going 60 to 140 to match state law. We'll have less problems with this in the future. I also can't help but feel that this is a trap that the legislature put in there. They allowed it to pass because they'll be able to point to some of the stuff that doesn't pencil out in the future to help them kill TIFs altogether. So that's another danger portion that I just can't help feeling. But maybe I'm a little bit too tinfoil hat sometimes. Anyway, I suggest we stick with the state definition, 60 to 140.
So, Mr. Dowd, you're warning against the poison pill,
Yeah.
which, okay.
Thank you, Your Honor. Sid, that's what I was thinking. That's kind of why I was asking the questions. I was asking about how does this get changed? Can it drop? How can it drop below all of that? What we're talking about now for the AMIs. And in all reality, I'm also couching where I'm thinking on some of this with past discussions about this topic from when we talked about it before, because Councilman Hunter, you had said you wanted to see it at 0.
Could have, yeah.
So what I'm saying is that with that becomes illegal. And then when the council goes through, I mean, I would say, because it gets into something that's not workforce housing, gets into something entirely different. When that happens, now all of a sudden the state's going through and looking at what you're doing with TIF. And I mean, would I be wrong? And if you going through and saying you're abusing it?
Well, in statutes, it's for workforce housing.
Right.
And I'd agree with Councilman Dowd, is that low-income housing has a different designation. You were asking earlier about tax generation. That is one of the components of the criteria that's already written into the policies, where it talks about a project is expected to generate new taxes. Now, how that's done is dependent upon the project itself, but some of that statement that you had expressed earlier is already written into our policies. Now, that can be changed as well by council, but that is one of the criterias that again goes back to that foundation. And there's going to be, to get back to both of your points, there's going to be TIF bills in the legislature this year, without a doubt.
Yeah, that's true. Okay.
Mr. Hunter?
Yeah. So I was going to make a motion on the AMI, moving it from 160, 140 to just 160, 120. I was going to keep it at the 60 because of the state legislature and how they defined it. But hearing Ms. Morisaki speak to seeing some folks that maybe they could benefit going above 120, that makes me reconsider. And also I hear the argument about, let's not test the legislature on that. So I'll be skeptical of any projects that come before us that are above 120. I may not vote for them, but I'm willing to skip that motion and keep it at 60 well, actually it's not at 60, 140, is it? It's 80, 120. So I will move to amend it to 60 to 140 area median income.
Second.
Okay. Question on that versus us putting percentages in, can we just reference the AMI limits per Montana, detailed in Montana code, and reference the code? So if they change it, it changes with us versus having to amend it?
Personally, I'd go the route of amending it if they change it for some perspective, because you don't know how that could happen if they,
Got it. Yep, okay.
how they may do it. They may put it in a different section
Oh,
applying
Yeah, I mean,
to different
okay.
things.
Might see someone from Central Committee. Yeah. So motion second, moving it from 60 to 140?
Did we have a second?
Yeah, we had a second, Ms. Dahlman.
Oh, okay.
Discussion on that, any more discussion on that?
So I know we need the workforce housing, and I do like seeing that this is another tool that we can go and use. I have a little heartburn about it, but I'm gonna go ahead and support this, and see how it goes. And like city manager said, I mean, every year TIFs are under attack anyhow. So, but I know, we've had public comment. I know that as a city, we've been very good with our TIF districts. So, and we've used them very effectively. And I don't have any doubts that this would be any different. But I'm protective of the process because I know how valuable it is to go in addressing blight and stuff in areas of town where you're trying to revitalize and create that tax base. So that's why I'm so protective of it. So I'm gonna go ahead and support this.
Okay. Other discussion on that amendment?
You're supporting the amendment.
The amendment, yeah.
I'll support the amendment to get it with state law, but I am really hesitant on the main bill itself, so I'll be supporting this, but I don't see the next little steps here.
And I'll support the amendment because to me, it's just like looking at the legislators and going. Never been afraid of them. So I'll support that. Can I have a roll call vote on the amendment?
Counselor Gabrielle?
Aye.
Counselor Graham?
Aye.
Counselor Dowd?
Aye.
Counselor Dahlman?
Aye.
Counselor Hunter?
Aye.
Counselor Nunley?
Aye.
Mayor Johnson?
Aye. Back to the original motion.
I have two more motions. And kind of on this theme of the skepticism around TIF and just the risks there and stuff, I think it's important that we keep it tight, right? Best way I can describe it. And my concern with this is that without kind of sideboards, it can become just kind of a handout to developers that can abuse it. I could imagine somebody applying and for affordable housing, they're really giving lip service for workforce housing. Maybe their initial listing is at the price that meets the definition, but then if it's a rental, 6 months later, somebody moves out or something, the next listing, or if it's a house, the next time it transfers, it's no longer of that definition, and they raise it up to, much higher. So I think it's important that in the kind of authorizing of it, we have requirement on the time scale. And I know Missoula did this as well with theirs. So my motion would be that we require, as part of the amendment to these plans, and I'll have to do it on both of them, but require that funds must go to rental projects that guarantee workforce affordability for a minimum of 30 years, or owner housing that guarantee workforce affordability in perpetuity.
I'd give you 10 years. Sorry.
Hey.
So you want to limit to 30 years for rental that has to be stuck there. Okay.
And just the 30-year comes from basically with our nonprofits who work in affordable housing. That's typically a term that is required by low-income housing tax credits and so on. So there is, what's that?
Financing? Oh, okay.
So, yeah, I mean, it's different. This isn't dealing
okay.
with city land that
okay.
is owned,
But
that
it's-
has a lease
it's
agreement that
tax
says
dollars. Got it, okay.
that.
So we have a motion, we have a second.
I'll second it.
Okay.
I'm seconding it because, I've gotten to know all you guys, have a certain modicum of trust with this body. I don't know who's going to be here next. I would prefer that this be written in rather than case by case moment when something comes before this body that they're asking for this TIF money. I'd rather this be pre-baked in. Because I don't know who's going to be here after me, after whoever. I just think that makes sense. That makes sense to me.
Your Honor.
My hesitation on it is it removes some of the flexibility. I mean, we don't know what may come forwards. The more specific we get within something like this, the less we may see it, because someone may look and go 30 years, we can do 20, but they'll look at that and go, okay, we're moving on to something different. I get a little hesitant about putting those sideboards on just because we don't know what might come down the road. And we may want to be flexible on those, on case by case, as you said.
Yeah, Your Honor, if I may, not speaking to the proposed amendment, but to the statement about the next council can change it. So a council can't put something into perpetuity related to these policies, like say that they can be changed by any council.
Duly
So-
noted.
Like I say, if you like the motion, go for it,
Great.
but understand that it could be changed by the next council.
I guess another thing that I would wonder, but I think what the mayor's saying, is the same thing I'm thinking is when you do that, how many projects are you knocking out of contention because they're seeing those numbers? The other thing is, I think we probably talked about this before, but what you're proposing still gives an increase in the cost of the rent for a certain percentage. It's not stagnant for where it is now for 30 years. Can't.
Right.
It has to be able to adjust up.
Right.
Okay. So, my other concern about that could come down to where we're in an area where we're trying to go through, in a lot of cases, take blight and redevelop it and make it better. And I just don't know if going and putting a development in the constraints of a 30-year would go through and then later on and contribute to more blight. Because is there the money to go through and do the repairs to the outside and to the side, everything that needs to have maintenance done on it, because they're going through and trying to meet the requirements of the 30-year, rent. So, well, look at what's happened now over the last 4 years when it comes to, there's a lot of demonization about landlords out there and everything and some of it's probably justified. But in all reality, when you have things jump 80, 100% sometimes, the price of rent has to go up to cover stuff, energy costs and everything. It's got to go up. Landlords aren't just banks to go through and shovel money out. So if we were to have another situation like we have now, and somebody's in a 30-year lease and these numbers are going up, the cost to run it's going up, what happens when it goes bankrupt? I think we've seen. So that's one of my problems about what you're proposing.
Mm-hmm. So to address kind of the flexibility issue, that question, that concern, and it gets to my next motion, which is the way I envision this, it has to have a kind of built-in structure to ensure this stuff over time. Even if it were 20 years, you would need have some sort of, a developer is not going to take that on, frankly. A developer's, our standard kind of market developer is not going to take on managing this affordability component and guaranteeing it over time and making sure that the people who are taking advantage of it meet the criteria and everything else. So I only see this as applying to projects where we have our nonprofits involved. And if they're going to be involved, if it's rental, it's 30 years. They don't do less, to my knowledge, or very rarely. And if it's home ownership, if it's land trust and Habitat for Humanity and the partnership there, is going to be in perpetuity in their structure. And so my next motion is they're kind of paired together. One is the time frame. The next one is the structure component that ensures that the people who are taking advantage of it are people who are eligible based on their income, and that affordability remains over time and is being monitored and checked on.
Okay, now you just lost me entirely on your, we're just gonna cater something to nonprofits, and that's.
Because
That's what
if
I'm
you
hearing.
don't, you get an abuse system, in my opinion. You're going to get the money. You're going to get the money going to projects that can't ensure that they can deliver on what we're asking them to deliver on.
Okay, Mr. Dowd?
A couple of reasons that I'm opposed to the amendment. First off, the more narrow the standards, guidelines, and rules are, the more expensive everything becomes. And the less the developer can use ingenuity to build a better, whatever. We've seen this happen here over the last 4 or 5 years with our developers, as we've asked them, we need more housing, we need more apartment buildings, and instead of just doing the single-family plots like we've seen in the past, they've come in with some really ingenious PUDs, multi-use areas, and I love that we gave them that flexibility to be creative. I point to the one on 4 Mile where they put kind of like the brownstones in the middle of the project, where they will have the least effect on the view from from their neighbors, right? So I don't want to restrict them any more than we have, and I just can't trap anybody in 30 years of poverty. That's the other reason. I know I have a difference of opinion here, but as you set the income level and as you monitor that they can't have more than that, you're restricting people from growing and doing better, because as soon as they come to within, or they're just going to go a little bit over what allows them to stay there, they won't take that opportunity, because the difference in what they're paying at this place and the difference that they would have if they had to go out and find something on the market is too large and doesn't make that worthwhile. So I don't like limiting people.
I understand that concern, and just to clarify my thinking on it, and I wish some of our nonprofits were here to kind of answer how they approach that question, but my thinking is it's the initial entrance into the unit or purchasing the property. If they increase their income while they're in there, they don't get, my thinking, they wouldn't necessarily get kicked out. It's the new person that coming in has to meet that income requirement. So if they move out eventually because they're making more money and they can go afford a better place, they don't get kicked out when they start making the more. But once they move out, somebody else comes in, that somebody else has to then also meet the income requirements.
I understand that, and that's great. Nothing's saying that we can't do a project or the developer can't do a project that does exactly that, right? But we're limiting them to just doing that if we set these, guidelines up, or what did you call them, sideboards. So anyway, just my 2 cents.
Any other discussion on the amendment?
And I think I kind of agree with what you're saying, Sid. It's talking exactly about the poison pill earlier, and that taking something that's potentially a good thing, and then you got the Looney Tunes thing of, oh, George, I'm going to love you and kiss you and hug you and kiss you and hug you, and pretty soon poor George is just squished out, and the program's dead. And that's where I see this going, and I've heard the statements now that make me believe that that's where poor George is going. So I'll be out.
Looney Tunes.
Now I can't stop thinking about Looney Tunes.
I'm not sure I followed that point, but I like the way it was delivered.
Any other discussion on the amendment? Have a roll call vote?
Counselor Gabrielle?
No.
Counselor Graham?
No.
Counselor Dowd?
No.
Counselor Dahlman?
Aye.
Counselor Hunter?
Aye.
Counselor Nunley?
No.
Mayor Johnson?
No. Back to the original as amended with the one amendment for AMI.
So yeah, with the AMI amendment.
We did get the state-defined AMI, right? That passed?
It was the 60 to 1.
Yes.
Motion has
60,
been amended
140.
to include that, but we haven't passed it yet.
Okay.
But we haven't passed that yet.
Okay.
So again, to provide the public with assurance that this is not going to be money that just subsidizes developers who don't need it and who aren't going to fulfill the promises that they make to us, I would like to amend it so that we require that funds go only to projects that can demonstrate a capacity to ensure both the targeted workforce housing affordability and that residents meet the AMI requirements for the 30, I won't include the time frame because we didn't pass that. So I'll just leave it there.
Can you read that one more time?
Yeah, require that funds go only to projects that can demonstrate a capacity to ensure both the targeted workforce housing affordability and that residents meet the AMI requirements.
Second.
But won't they?
Okay, we got a second, but, okay, meet the AMI requirements for how long?
Well, that's what I wanted to do on the previous motion, but that got denied, so.
So, okay, any other discussion on that motion?
My only discussion on that would be, we're going to require that anyway for the project.
Are we? It's not in there.
If they are going to,
That they have the capacity to do what they're saying they're doing. That they have some sort, like a developer could come in and say, I'm gonna do this, and then a year later, they sell the project and they're out of there, and the next guy, and so the initial offering of the rental unit or the housing met the criteria in that first year, but then forever in the future, it doesn't because there's nobody there to
Bad
fulfill
on
it.
us for approving that individual project
Well,
without the time.
But why not build it into the rules first?
So,
So,
Yeah. Okay. Any other discussion? Roll call vote?
Counselor Gabrielle?
No.
Counselor Graham?
No.
Counselor Dowd?
No.
Counselor Dahlman?
Aye.
Counselor Hunter?
aye.
Counselor Nunley?
No.
Mayor Johnson?
No. Back to the original as amended for AMI 60 to 140.
So I'm very concerned about it moving forward without those amendments that I requested, because I think that puts sideboards to ensure that it doesn't get abused. But because I think that there's an opportunity that there will be good projects moving forward, and hopefully future councils will have the vision, the wisdom to reject those proposals that are just lip service on affordability. I will support it, but with some concern about it.
Other discussion? Have a roll call vote?
Counselor Gabrielle?
Aye.
Counselor Graham?
Aye.
Counselor Dowd?
Aye.
Counselor Dahlman?
Aye.
Counselor Hunter?
Aye.
Counselor Nunley?
Aye.
And Mayor Johnson?
Aye, motion carries. City manager report.
Oh, ordinance
We have 28.
Oh, wait, I didn't, that horse to death, I get to do another one? Oh, jeez.
okay, George.
Ordinance 1928, all right.
What we got?
We have motion. Ms. Dahl.
I move ordinance number 1928, an ordinance amending the West Side Core Area Urban Renewal Plan encompassing a portion of downtown Kalispell as delineated in the West Side Core Area Plan Amendment to the City of Kalispell, Growth Policy 2020.
Second.
Second. Okay. Mr. Hunter.
I move to amend the ordinance to revise the definition of workforce housing to be 60 to 140% AMI.
Second.
Any discussion?
Let's do it again.
No.
Cover roll call vote.
Counselor Gabrielle?
So, wait. Where's the amendment going?
To the parameters of what defines workforce housing, 60 to 140 as per state definition.
So where is that?
Right here, whereas.
Right, okay,
1820.
so we're changing the same.
In the whereas.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah.
Aye.
Counselor Graham?
Aye.
Counselor Dowd?
Aye.
Counselor Dahlman?
Aye.
Counselor Hunter?
Aye.
Counselor Nunley?
Aye.
Mayor Johnson?
Aye, motion carries. So as amended.
That was the amendment.
Yep.
Yep, back to the original. So I won't go through, obviously, the two failed amendments. I will just say that applies to this one as well, my concerns, and I'll be supporting it with those concerns raised, with the understanding that those two motions failed on the previous one.
Any other discussion? Really?
Yeah, I'm just gonna say, we're both moving forward, but we both have concerns. So, but let's get some workforce housing going.
Okay, roll call vote?
Counselor Gabrielle?
Aye.
Counselor Graham?
Aye.
Counselor Dowd?
Aye.
Counselor Dahlman?
Aye.
Counselor Hunter?
Aye.
Counselor Nunley?
Aye.
Mayor Johnson?
Aye, motion carries. Now, after the pump fake, city manager reports.
Okay, just want to do a quick rundown of upcoming work sessions. I'll come back to next week after I go through some of the other meetings because it'll make more sense. But on the 28th, we'll be hitting biosolids and the review, we've had that, and kind of an update from Public Works related to it. In 2 weeks is Veterans Day, so we don't usually meet on Mondays. That following Tuesday, we'll have a good portion going to National League of Cities. So there won't be a work session on the 12th.
Maybe.
On the
Yeah, Tampa's still there.
November 4th, at the regular meeting during committee reports, Montana League of Cities and Towns will come and do the legislative kind of update, looking towards the next session, which comes back to next Monday. I originally had, and was looking at that as a work session for our legislative platform that we adopt every year preceding the session. Maybe a good idea to wait until after we hear from the league, just as a thought, rather than coming back to it. So if it pleases council, we'll do that and just not have a meeting next Monday night for a work session.
Sure.
Seeing nodding heads, so. And I know we're going to close the meeting here, but just to kind of give an update, we will leave the video and the recordings going on while we go into closed session. We'll go up into the mezzanine for that discussion when we close it. So this will all be active in here. The microphones will be going. We'll have executives or closed session on the live feed. And then when we close out, I think all we need is for the mayor to come in and close the meeting officially. So just wanted to give a little warning for the entire audience that the microphones will still be live during that time, and our closed session will occur upstairs. That's all I have, Your Honor.
Okay. Anything from council real quick? Mr. Hunter?
Yeah, couple of things. One, I know that we've had an increased policing of Kalispell crews, and I do appreciate that. But I also note that I haven't heard the difference at my house. And so I still think there's an issue there and a problem there. And I appreciate the staff sending around a couple sample ordinances. I think one was from Iowa, was it? One of the Midwest state. Anyways, there was Washington and Midwest state. I thought there were some good things in the Midwest state one. I thought that was the better one. I would be interested in seeing a work session to explore possible ordinance similar to the Midwest one example that we saw.
Seeing heads nod. I can also say Billings has something very similar. I spoke with them at the league, and they had a similar component. So
Cruising ordinance.
we can get their sample ordinance from Billings as well, and we'll schedule that for an upcoming meeting.
Yeah. And then the second thing, I know we're, seems like we're hitting on it every week. I'm sorry, Mr. Fisher isn't here. But the outlaw, I also noticed the fence down. And so I'm wondering, update, have we, Mr. Mayor, have you, no, and staff, have we heard anything about the building permits or where that's at?
I don't know if
I had a meeting with them last week. Their building permits are still in. They are looking at making some changes, supposed to have some updated plans here by the end of the month. I can't make any promises, but looking at having construction crews on site here by the end of the month. So according to them, they are progressing, moving forward, and hopefully see some progress here at the end of the month, at least see some activity on site from the property owner and their contractors, which hopefully should be able to address some of the concerns, certainly with trespassing and such. So.
Yeah, I mean, even just securing the doors, I mean, they can't do that before construction, and no, they didn't say anything about that.
They're aware that there's people on their property, that's correct.
Okay. All right, thank you. That's all I had.
Anything else? I think the only thing maybe, Mr. Dowd?
Just real briefly on a couple of discussions we've had tonight. So, I think we need to continue to pursue what's going on in the outlaw, old outlaw. I don't think we should pursue it with like having ordinances created or whatever, because by the time those get in place, it'll be months from now, right? And we're really only focused on this one issue. It's not like we're having issues all over town, right? So I do hope that we can do something. I don't know if we can revisit and maybe add an exception or what, not an exception, but a requirement to their project or whatever that would help alleviate this issue. Or if they have a PUD, a CUP that we could threaten or something to get them to like do something. But I'm hearing it from a lot of people around town. So anyway, I'm glad we're pursuing it by looking at this specific property that has a specific problem and addressing that instead of, making everybody suffer. The other thing is we talked about the workforce housing in the TIF plan. I think it's a dangerous area to go into as a developer. And I would just recommend to a developer, if they're thinking about doing something like that, they can feel free to do it. But I would use the TIF funding for infrastructure instead of workforce housing. That way, they don't have the rug pulled out from under them by a legislature here in the next year or two. Just as a precaution, we can still do these projects, but they don't have to have that label placed upon them and have the state legislature just zoom in on it and say, okay, is this penciling out? Is this something we're going to attack? I'd rather they just use it for infrastructure. They get the same amount of money that they could get with the workforce housing, but it would make it more safe or future-proof because we've been using it for infrastructure for a while. That's just my recommendation with the limited knowledge that I have. And that's all I had, Your Honor.
Thank you, Mr. Dow. I think the only counter to that is, I think they're safe for the next 4 years because Governor Giant Fortune will never admit he signed a bad deal. So, I
Could be
think the
impeached.
only other question I had regarding the outlaw was looking at, don't want to use the names, but the property south of town where we used to have all the cars and everything in the lot and the neighbors were concerned. We took them to court. If I remember, that was the Furry property or what? And so, I mean, you look at that process, that took months to play out, correct? And there was specific,
Yeah, there were specific violations of our ordinance.
Right.
That's a problem we have here is we don't have
we don't have
specific
specific
violations
violation of ordinance.
Right.
So that's, I just, as we look at what we've done in the past, there's just isn't anything that can tie to this. And in all reality, you have a developer with a huge liability potentially with the access that he's allowing. So,
Just from a straight safety standpoint alone,
Well, I mean, they're taking on huge risk by allowing this to continue.
yes.
so with that, we're going to move into closed executive session. I'll go upstairs to the mezzanine.
Stuff.
Is anyone staying in here?
I don't know. I'm taking my stuff with me.
I don't think I have either.
I've been up here for a long time.
Hey. Yeah.
You get a council.
I don't want to speak near the microphone.
The state legislature doesn't like
No, I know, but what I'm saying.
a lot of the city's use of TIF, right? So I'm just afraid that if we open up an avenue that shows them that we're using TIF funds for a project that does not ultimately increase the tax base, that they'll come down and hammer it and say, well, you can't do these anymore because you guys are abusing them. Right? Which they've tried to do before for other reasons. I think Missoula's been slapped down, Billings probably, but it's every single legislative session they do that.
Okay, so you're kind of feeling like it may be setting up to fail in this sort of way? Does that make sense? Or it's just...
It's just a risk. It's a risk, yeah. Just, knowing past legislators and what they've tried to do.
Yeah, okay, I understand. Thank you.
Thanks.
Meeting is adjourned.